Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. This is Hunter.
This is Dave.
Today we're going to be talking about Historic Anthology 5. I don't know much about Historic, but Dave, you definitely do. Walk me through what's happening, what they've shown off.
All right. So far we've gotten, what is it? 10 cards? We've gotten 10 cards so far. So I've got these things kind of broken up into different categories, just talking a little bit about my thoughts about some of these, because I don't know. For those of you out there who do care about the historic format, for those of you out there who have been following along with the historic anthology series, this is the fifth one. Some of them have been good, some of them have been absolute crap. So, for example, the Historic Anthology 4 had 25 cards, and of those 25 cards, I think that 23 of them were just about garbage. One of them was okay, and then one of them is kind of meh. So I don't know. So far from what we have seen, however, I do think that Historic Anthology 5 does look to be a little bit more exciting. I think it's really interesting that we're getting this right after the Mystic Archives, because the Mystic Archives from Strixhaven really changed up the format for Historic. I think it added a ton of new value, a ton of new cards that are really, really playable. So I'm really curious to see kind of the direction that Wizards wants to go in with this.
All right. I mean, does Historic Anthology normally have like a theme to them, or I have no idea how they work?
So kind of. And I'm going to say kind of like super, super loosely. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a theme like they all actually care about the same kind of stuff, but typically within the anthology, there will be maybe like 2 or 3 different themes that you can kind of see like they're trying to introduce a new archetype or they're trying to bolster an archetype within the format.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so normally we happen to get, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 cards that would be like good in a stacks deck, or 1 or 2 cards that might be good in like an aggro deck. But not necessarily a theme per se. So it's not like we're going to go in here and like they're all going to care about the graveyard or all going to care about, I don't know, say mill or some other kind of strategy.
Okay. And you said, did you already say this set has 25 cards in it?
I don't know. I don't know the exact number. So looking at the other historic anthologies, there's been between 20 and 27, kind of the golden spot it looks like so far, at least, is 25. We have had 10 of them get revealed so far, so there's going to be another, I'm assuming, probably 10 to 15 more. They're going to be heading out within the next couple of days, so we'll have to keep an eye on that, and maybe that'll kind of shift my opinion about some of these other cards in here as well, because I do actually think some of these might have an impact on the format.
Break it down a little differently. Instead of showing off all the cards one at a time, just what cards do you think will see play based on what they've already kind of shown us?
All right, so from what we have seen so far, I have these kind of broken up to like 3 different categories: the really good, or the like I think that these actually do potentially either have a home or have the ability to spawn decks. The kind of like it might be playable, and then the last one being just like I don't really care. I don't think it's going to actually have any kind of impact on the format whatsoever. So the first one that I want to talk about is Intangible Virtue, and I think this one is actually a really, really cool card. So Intangible Virtue is 1 and a white for an enchant. We don't really have a token-based deck currently in Historic, but Intangible Virtue, if you've ever played any kind of real token-based in any in any format really that has this thing available, massive deal. Also stable on top of this, it gives vigilance to has all of your tokens now have the ability to attack. They can still block. Most of the time they're going to chump block, but that's totally fine because that's what tokens do. You make tons. I wouldn't be super surprised if maybe we see like an Orzhov
Hmm.
list that cares about tokens. Because we did just get a lot of like pest cards that came out of Strixhaven. So I think this would be really cool in maybe like a black white deck, or potentially even like a white green deck.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it sounds like it's laying some groundwork for a possible giant token deck to come.
I don't know. I think it would be really cool because it's a space that doesn't currently really exist in Historic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right
Um,
on,
an-
man.
Another one of the cards that I have up in the same kind of category is Whirler Rogue. So Whirler Rogue is 2 and 2 blue for a creature human rogue artificer. It's a 2/2 with when Whirler Rogue enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 colorless stopper artifact creature tokens with flying. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. I have this up here as a solid card. Number one, just because I just got done talking about Intangible Virtue. So I'm kind of seeing that there is a little bit going on here whenever it does come to tokens. The other thing you're being is Whirler Rogue is just such amazing value on its own. And then if you are playing any kind of artifact deck, you get additional synergies there. If you're playing any kind of deck that cares about party, I know that party wasn't really necessarily like the most impactful mechanic from Zendikar, but this thing is a rogue, so it is still going to potentially or it is still going to have an impact there as well. And then also that cute little ability of being able to tap 2 untapped artifacts you control so that target creature can't be blocked this turn. If you are playing some kind of deck that does care about that, that's just kind of icing on top of the cake.
Yeah,
And I mean,
I don't play Historic, but I do watch it every once in a while on YouTube. And I have seen artifact decks being pretty dominant, so I can see this being very good.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say dominant per se, but I think that we're starting to get there. And I think that this historic anthology actually might give us some tools where we can start to see some of these. I don't know. I don't want to say robots or like affinity style decks kind of really start to take root, but we'll see some interesting stuff. I think that are going to help to support the historic
All right. Yeah.
environment.
Might entice me into getting to play.
Yeah, I mean, you should honestly. I think the historic is a much better format than standard, but I don't know. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, one day.
The last solid card that I've seen so far, at least, and I will bring it up. This is honestly much more of a sideboard card than anything, but I know that this has been a powerhouse in different formats in the past, and that being Ancient Grudge. So Ancient Grudge is 1 in a red for an instant. It says destroy target artifact, and it has the flashback ability on it for just a single green mana. Flashback, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with it, says you may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, and then you exile it. So essentially, what you get to do is, so long as you are playing in a deck that can make both red and green mana, this thing has the ability to destroy 2 target artifacts, which is another thing here that I'm starting to think maybe we might be getting some fun little artifacts in this set.
Yeah.
I know that this isn't necessarily a card that's going to have decks built around it. This is 100% more of a sideboard card. You're going to go ahead and you're going to take this out in decks where you're not playing up against artifacts. You're going to load this in decks where you are playing against them. But if you do find yourself in decks where you do need to kill an artifact or 2, this card is wonderful.
It does. It seems like a really good sideboard card.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're essentially like if you need this card, it's going to 2-for-1 your opponent because you're going to play it and then you're going to play it again for its flashback. And I mean, for just 3 mana, you're probably trading up in terms of like mana value there. See, look at that. I'm getting it. Mana value.
Mana value, not CMC. Mana value.
So those are going to be my solid picks of what we have seen so far.
Okay. So what else are they showing us?
So far, what we've also gotten is we have a couple of cards that I think might have some potential in the format. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is Jeremoca's Command. Jeremoca's Command is one of the commands that came out with the Cons of Tarkir block. So there were 5 of these in total, or 5 different kinds of commands in total.
I don't like the commands that have come out with Strixhaven.
Yeah. I actually think these are quite a bit better than the ones that have come out in Strixhaven, though.
Okay.
I don't know. I think many of these are really prime cards.
So what does this one do?
So Jeremoca's Command is a green and a white for an instant that says choose 2. So it has 4 different modes on it. The first mode says prevent all damage target instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn. The second mode says target player sacrifices an enchantment. The third mode says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And the fourth mode says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. These cards do so much. The reason why I think that these things just in general are powerhouses is because like you're never going to find a matchup in which this doesn't do at least something. Just because I mean there's so much flexibility here, and you do have the ability to choose 2 for this. Now, sadly, you can't pick the same one twice, but I mean, this is a removal spell in the case that you need it to be. This is a pump spell in the case that you need it to be, and that's a +1/+1 counter at instant speed. This is an enchantment destruction based spell if you need it to be that. Or if your opponent is trying to combo you off, maybe, I don't know, with what is that big red sorcery that just came out with Strixhaven. You
Crackle
probably
with
know the name of.
power.
There you go. This stops that. So you're going to be able to prevent that damage. Now, given that the first mode, I think, on this is probably going to be the one that's least likely to be used, but I mean, it still has applications.
Okay.
So the reason why I have this in kind of a more like a has potential category here is because I don't see it really slotting in with any existing deck. We do have a green white deck currently in historic, and that being the Selesnya Coco deck, which, to be completely honest with you, I think is one of, if not the best deck currently in historic. But because it's a collected company deck, it has to run a critical threshold of creatures. So I don't know if they would be wanting to take on a card like this. And there's not really like a green white deck that's out there right now that I feel like would really want this card. So
Yeah,
for
I was
example,
watching Day 9 play that collected company deck.
yeah.
Pretty
So I
insane.
it's very good. So Jeremoca's command, I think that it's a really solid card. It's a very powerful card. I think it has potential. I think it maybe just kind of needs to find a home, and maybe I'm just not currently finding that home for it. The next one that I want to talk about is Trash for Treasure. Trash for Treasure is a sorcery. It costs 2 and a red. And it says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think that this card has potential. I don't want to say that this card is good, but I think it has potential because there are some big heavy hitting artifacts that you can cheat out into play with this. I know that there is a 4 mana recursion spell for artifacts in white that doesn't see any play at all. But I think with you having to sacrifice an artifact on this, it might actually be a little bit of a potential upside. And being able to grab a card from your graveyard and throw that thing onto the battlefield because you're not going to be casting it is also really powerful. I just don't think that this card necessarily has a home right now. But I mean, if we can get one of those like really big, really impactful artifacts in this set, then maybe. I know that.
I mean, Paradox Engine would be a good one to bring back.
I mean, Paradox Engine currently doesn't exist in a format, and for a very real reason. Paradox Engine is very busted.
I thought Paradox Engine isn't historic.
Let me double check on that one. I don't think so.
I was watching a video today where it was.
Oh, you know what? No, I'm thinking of a different card. You're right. You are absolutely right.
Yeah, Paradox Engine is banned in Commander, but
That's where I'm getting my stuff mixed up with.
in historic, it is very much alive.
Some other ones though, because I know that we have what is it? Darksteel Colossus, and
Mhm.
then I don't know. We could potentially end up with something like the Darksteel Forge in here as well, and those are going to be big, heavy hitting artifacts that you're going to need to deal with. I don't know. Maybe since we have stuff like Fates of Looting in historic now, since it does allow you to start pitching those cards, so it does give you targets for Trash or Treasure.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm curious to see how this card ends up evolving in the format, though, and if there is a deck that does want to adopt
like
this.
you said, man, it has potential.
Yeah, and then the last one for this category, just because currently the meta is absolutely fucking wonky. The last one that I want to talk about here is Stifle. So Stifle is a single blue mana for an instant that says counter target activated or triggered ability. If you have played Historic over the last couple of days, you have probably run into a Tainted Pact deck. This is your answer to Tainted Pact.
You know, David, I don't play historic, but I have played you. and you run that deck, and it is very good compared to a standard deck that I run. It's
Okay,
odd how that works.
well, you don't play historic. I've been trying to get you to play historic, and I don't play standard. So like whenever you want to play me, of course, yes, we're gonna be
Yeah,
playing mismatched decks. Um, Stifle,
it's not
however,
fun.
you can counter a target activated or triggered ability, which means that you can counter Thassa's ability, or I'm sorry, the Thassa's Oracle ability, which means that Tainted Pact player may very well just go to exile out their library and not win the game with Thassa's Oracle, which would be absolutely hilarious to see these kinds of decks just kind of completely whiff on that. Not only do they fail on their combo, but they're successful in killing themselves in the process, because if they have no library left, that ability doesn't trigger, then, well, they're left attempting to draw a card on the next turn, and they have no card left to draw, so they lose. I think
Huh.
in most environments, though, I think Stifle is honestly pretty bad. I don't think that outside of maybe like a Tainted Pact deck, you're going to be casting this on your opponent very often.
You
I
think
think
people would keep it in their sideboard?
for the current meta, I think that it might be a good idea, just because, I mean, I've been running into Tainted Pact a lot, but outside of this kind of meta, I'm not sure. What I would probably consider with something like this is actually to build your deck in a way that you're not targeting your opponent's things, you're targeting yours. So, for example, looking at something like this, you can cast this on your Croxa, and then your Croxa doesn't get sacrificed.
Hmm. That'd be pretty cool.
Those like little workarounds kind of already exist in the format. There was a 2-drop from Throne of Eldraine. Can't remember the name of the card right now. That gets rid of abilities whenever a creature would enter the battlefield. The ability doesn't trigger, so Croxa doesn't sacrifice itself whenever that does get dropped. That doesn't currently see play, but this has a little bit, I feel like, of a wider net. And I feel
Okay.
generally blue is just kind of a better color than white, so this might just be better. I don't know. I'm curious to kind of see if this is capable of finding a home. I think that right now it might be a decent sideboard card, but outside of this meta, and I'm not 100% confident that Tainted Pact and the Tainted Pact deck is going to survive.
It's a bit busted, man.
Okay. It's a little bit. It is a little bit busted. I will give it that. It is much more resilient than what I think it should be, especially considering that you are running a list of almost entirely just one-ofs. However, I think that might be more of an issue with play design and how Wizards of the Coast have been pushing out a lot of they've been pushing out a lot of cards that are meant to be really good in best of one versus best of three. And I feel like that's kind of why we start to see issues like this, because there are cards that can go grab stuff from your sideboard. So you can throw an extra copy of Tainted Pact or an extra copy of Thassa's Oracle in the sideboard. And those decks actually do this. So in the case that they do whiff on their combo, they can reload it. I think that might be more of an issue with play design, though.
Gotcha.
All right. So those are my has potential cards, and if you have looked at the list or if you've looked at the list at all, you'll know that there are 4 other cards to talk about, and these ones I honestly am 100% meh on.
Meh.
So the first one is Ray of Revelation, and this is 1 and a white for an instant that says destroy target enchantment, and it has flashback of a green. And some of you right now are probably thinking, wait a second, Ancient Grudge was in my solid and destroys artifacts, and this is in my meh and is very, very similar. This one just destroys enchantments instead. I think that artifacts are typically going to be more of a kind of a pain to deal with. Also, if we're getting Jeremoca's command, which is the same colors, it does the exact same thing and more. So why would I be playing this?
Hmm.
I just feel like there's better options.
Do you run into a lot of decks that have enchantments?
No, not really. I mean, you might need to get rid of like a great hinge from time to time, but even at that, your opponent's only going to be playing maybe 1. And in which case, congratulations, you dealt with it with your Mochas. I mean, I feel like I run into artifacts much, much more. So something like Ancient Grudge, that takes care of 2 Ember Cleaves, which are much more threatening than the majority of the enchantments that you're going to run into in the format. So, Ray of Revelation, it's meh. I'm not super excited. I don't think it's going to be all that playable. I really don't even think this is all that great of a sideboard card. It's meh.
It's meh.
Next up, I'm going to talk about Voranklex, Voice of Hunger. So this is the OG Voranklex. I actually think that this card is mad too, even though this card, honestly, if you get it in play, is an absolute powerhouse. I just think it's the getting it in play part that is going to really be kind of difficult. So Voranklex, Voice of Hunger, is 6 green, so a total mana value of 8 for a legendary creature. It's a Praetor. It's a 7/6 with Trample, and it says whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So it doubles all your mana, and it essentially just kind of like shuts your opponent down to like 50%. But I mean, honestly, it's even worse than that. Because instead of just shutting it down for 50%, your opponent now has to suddenly start paying attention to, okay, well, do I want to play out this turn, or do I want to play out next turn, or how do I want to go about kind of just sequencing for the rest of the game so long as this creature is in play? I think Voranclack is an absolute powerhouse. I do run this in one of my EDH decks, for example, just because, I mean, whenever he does stick, he is super powerful. However, coming in here as an 8-drop, I feel like is really slow. You have to be able to reanimate or cheat this guy out. And right now, I mean, we have what, Unburial Rites, I think is our best recursion that we're going to see for this. And I just feel like that might be too slow. I think that Historic is in a pretty good place in terms of interaction, and I think that they might just be able to either A, stop Voranclack before he gets into the battlefield, kill you before you're able to reanimate him, or if you do drop him, there's enough removal where, yeah, you might slow him down for a turn, but you probably spent an entire turn getting this guy in play too, so you just kind of just did nothing. I don't know. maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is like the curve topper in like a mono green deck, where you are dropping Llanowar Elves and you're dropping the Great Henge, and maybe you can cheat this guy out on turn 5. I don't know. I'm not super sold here. I think that he's got quite a bit of other competition as well, just because there are so many busted and broken green cards currently in Historic. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about him, so I'm gonna put him in meh.
Put him in meh.
Also joining him down here is Vault Scourge. Vault Scourge is 1 and a Phyrexian mana. That Phyrexian mana can be spent by either with a black or by paying 2 life. It's an artifact creature imp, and it is a 1/1 with flying and lifelink. Vault Scourge is, number 1, he's a really dope card. And I know that I have him down here in like my meh category, and I'm talking about another card that I think is actually pretty cool. So Vault Scourge used to see, or yeah, I mean, it saw play in Modern. It was in the Affinity deck. I don't know if they currently run this anymore, if that version of the Affinity deck actually even exists anymore. I know that Herd and Scales came out and kind of revolutionized that. But currently, I just don't see a home for this card. It's either 2 mana for a 1/1 with flying, or realistically, what it really is it's 1 mana and 2 life for a 1/1 with flying, and lifelink. I don't think lifelink decks are going to want this because there just are better cards out there. I mean, there's a 1/1 with flying and lifelink that doesn't cost you the 2 life. I don't really know if artifact decks are going to care about this. I mean, if you want to go off for maybe like, I don't know, some kind of like, I don't know. I feel like this card is wonderful if you want to be able to dump your hand very, very quickly. And I don't currently see a deck that would want this. I mean, the best I could see right now would be maybe like a Storm deck. But even the Storm decks, I think the best one out there right now is like the Burgy red Storm deck where you're just going to die at a grape shot, and they don't need this card. I am a little bit optimistic on this because we're getting some artifact removal in this set because we are getting an artifact recursion card. Now we have a really efficient artifact creature. Maybe we'll be getting some good artifact pumps here, which is
I was gonna
something that
say, I'm seeing a theme of artifact just based on the cards we've seen so far.
so artifacts and token as two of the one or are two of the ones that I'm kind of seeing them put together so far, which would be dope because I mean neither one of those decks really exist in any capacity within the format. So I would be super stoked to see a new deck um just kind of pop up in the format and something that would be playable, something that would be fun. I'm not asking for anything to go out there and be crazy. I'm not asking for like a new tier 1 deck even. I'm just asking for kind of a little bit more diversity, even though I actually think that Historic is in a really good place right now, even with Tainted Pact running around, all that kind of shenanigans. There's a lot of diversity within the meta. And I don't really think that any one deck in particular is super busted. So I don't know. I'm always a fan of more diversity. I just don't think this thing currently has a home. I would love to be able to wake up tomorrow, however, and see that there are a couple of more cards spoiled for historic anthology and say, you know what? Absolutely wrong. This thing is a slam dunk. It has the home. It has the key card that it was missing. I just don't have it right now.
Gotcha.
And then the last card that was spoiled is Ojutai's Command. Ojutai's Command is 2 white and a blue for an instant. It says choose 2. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain 4 life, counter target creature spell, and draw a card. So just like all the rest of the commands from this cycle, they all have 4 modes. They are all super, super flexible. I do have this one in my mag category though. Number one, because it's very expensive. This is going to be coming in at 4 mana. Even though that, yeah, I get that this is an instant. And it does do a lot, but I feel like within blue or within the white blue just kind of archetype, which number one, I see remnants of it. I want it to be there. I don't think that this. I don't know if this takes up a slot, just because I feel like there is a lot of competition for the higher mana value cards within those kinds of decks. And especially since we're starting to get so many cheap and efficient cards that are being run in those decks. I mean, we just got Brainstorm in a format that it's going to be played in the same deck that this would. I mean, honestly, it's blue, so it's of course going to be played in the same deck that this would. But I don't know. I mean, the versatility of this is really nice. I just think that this has a lot of competition out there for other cards. And I don't know if this is in a spot where it's gonna take a slot in your 60. So I
So
don't
it's
see
meh.
it. It's meh.
That sounds it sounds like we got some potential. Well, like you said, we got potential. We got good cards. We got meh cards. So that's the 10 they showed off. And this set comes out on May 27th. So let's revisit this when the set is completely announced. But until then, let's play a game. Since let's say there's 25 cards and we've just shown you the 10 that they've already announced. What are some cards you think could be in Historic Anthology 5?
Oh, this is where we get to the fun part. We have seen 2 of the commands from Khans of Tarkir, and oh my god, I would absolutely love it if the other 3 were in here too. So the other 3 being Kolaghan's Command, Atarka's Command, and Silumgar's Command. Now, Silumgar's Command, it's cute. It's 5 whole mana in blue and black. I don't care really about that one. It's 100% meh. It's just very, very expensive at what it does. However, Kolaghan's Command and Atarka's Command, I think not only are incredibly good cards, but they're also incredibly good cards that immediately find a home. They would slot into decks that already exist. They would potentially even make new decks on top of that. And I mean, they're fitting into decks that are tier 1, tier 2. These are very, very good cards.
Hmm.
So Kolaghan's Command is 1, a black and a red for an instant that says choose 2. You can return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Target player discards a card. Destroy target artifact, or Kolaghan's command deals 2 damage to target creature or player. For 3 mana at instant speed, you can knock out one of your opponent's artifacts. You could do shock one of your opponent's creatures, or just go for the face. You could recur something from your graveyard, or you could force your opponent to discard a card. And there is already a deck in Historic that wants to do literally all 4 of these things. And that being the Dreadhorde Arcanist deck, which is my favorite deck in the format. So seeing something like this, I mean, this card is fantastic. Now,
Sounds like you're a bit biased.
Oh, I'm 100% biased on this. Now, I do know that, yes, okay, this costs 3 mana, so you're not going to be able to recur this with Dreadhorde Arcanist. Unless, of course, you claim it, in which case, or I'm sorry, unless, of course, you feign it, which does give it the +2/+0, which means you can recast this thing. So you could potentially do this twice, which is really, really powerful. However, that deck does play Bedevil oftentimes as like a 1 of or a 2 of. I think that this just immediately replaces Bedevil. Oftentimes Bedevil is thrown in because the deck doesn't have a way to deal with artifacts. This gets rid of an artifact, and then it also shocks. So it gets rid of another creature that your opponent has, or it forces them to discard a card on top of the fact that you're probably already Thoughtseizing and Inquisitioning them. So you're immediately putting on this immense amount of pressure, and I think that this card just slots in beautifully. It has the ability to return a target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, so it's doing something that the deck already cares about. Given that Claim to Fame can hit every single creature in the deck pretty much already, but this can also hit Loris, which is the companion that goes along with that deck too. So slam dunk of a card. I am going to be really stoked if this card makes it in, and I am going to be absolutely disappointed whenever they choose to omit this card because this one is too good. So I want it to be there. We've gotten 2 of the commands so far. Wizards is totally going to let me down. I know it's going to happen. The other one is Antarctica's command, and just like Kolaghan's command, this immediately has a home, and this card is stupidly good. So Antarctica's command is a red and a green for an instant. So this thing only costs 2. It is the cheapest of the commands. So you get to choose 2, just like the rest. It says your opponents can't gain life this turn. That's cute. It deals 3 damage to each opponent. So you shock them. I'm sorry, you bolt them. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn. So for 2 mana, you could potentially get to bolt. If you are playing like a deck that cares about lands, for example, I don't know, maybe like a red-green landfall deck, which, wait a second, that's a thing. This cheats an additional land into play. So you're going to get double landfall triggers and bolt your opponent in the face? I mean, you
It seems a very good combination.
It just strikes me as stupidly powerful. And then on top of that, I mean, okay, so say, for example, okay, well, you know what? Maybe you're going a little bit wider. Maybe you're playing with a different kind of deck. It's creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn, not creature. So it's the whole team. This card is fantastic. I think this would be an absolute slam dunk as well, which is another reason why Wizards is not going to let this thing in Historic, and I'm going to be completely disappointed whenever we get Silumgar's command instead.
Just like that, you've given up all hope.
I mean, look, this is my one of the cards I would like to be in there based off of what we have seen so far, or just kind of like my speculation. And then I have 3 other cards that could be in like Magical Christmas Land. The last card that I think might actually be in this set is Temur Battle Rage. Temur Battle Rage, also coming out with the Cons of Tarkir block, is 1 in a red for an instant that says target creature gains double strike until end of turn. It also has Ferocious, and it says that the creature also gains trample until end of turn if that creature has power 4 or greater. We got Death Shadow last time in the Historic Anthology 4. The modern version of the Death Shadow decks do run Temur Battle Rage, or did run Temur Battle Rage. It's a very good card. It is a kill shot, essentially, with that creature. Just because, I mean, you're already swinging with a big body. This is going to give it double strike. This is going to give it trample. Because of that ferocious ability, you're going to end up hitting for a ton of damage. This card also would potentially be really good in like the Gruul decks that already exist as Gruul aggro decks, because you're already swinging in with creatures with 4 power or greater, and this gives double strike, which is kind of the exact same thing that Embercleave is doing. It gives double strike and trample. Now, sure, you're not going to get the +1/+1 that the Embercleave would get, but for 2 mana at instant speed, this is a hell of an effect. This is going to make blocking incredibly difficult for your opponent. It's going to make them do a lot of mental math there to ensure that they stay alive. So I can absolutely see this being a powerhouse. I mean, Antarctica's Command and Teamer Battle Rage might be too much for the deck, because I know I'm talking about kind of the same deck here, but I don't know. Both fantastic cards. I would love to see both of these kind of introduced in the format. I think that they would do really well in a green-red aggro, so Gruul aggro, maybe a landfall deck, or Teamer Battle Rage specifically doing really, really well also in Death's Shadow. So those are my 3 cards that I think I'm gonna hold. I'm gonna hold a little bit of hope for, based off of what we've seen so far. And then I have
just a little bit of hope.
And then I have 3 cards that like I'm smoking something, because like so these are my 3 cards that I think like would absolutely, if the stars aligned, maybe Wizards of the Coast would even consider them. So we've gotten 2 cards so far with flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go for a third. And we have Intangible Virtue, which we know is going to get printed. So let's go with the mistake of a card that exists anyways in Lingering Souls. Lingering Souls is 2 and a white for a sorcery that says create 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, and it has a flashback of 1 and a black. For the low cost of 1 card and a total of 5 mana, you get 4 1/1s with flying, which I know probably doesn't sound all that great. If you have ever played up against a Lingering Souls deck, they are frustrating because of how many creatures they can just create. And something like this, if there is a token deck that is going to exist, Intangible Virtue and Lingering Souls are literally best friends. What's better than spending 3 mana on 2 2/2s with flying and vigilance? Actually, okay, I know exactly what's better than that. You can spend 2 mana the next turn, or if you have that same 2 mana up that turn and do it all over again. Lingering Souls is stupidly powerful. It's a very, very good card. I don't think that it would be printed in this set, although I'm going to keep a little bit of hope for it, just because I do see some flashback themes in here. So hopefully,
Your
but
hope.
I'm not seeing it. Actually, I don't even know if I want Lingering Souls in the format, to be completely honest. It's such a pain in the ass to deal with, just because like single target removal, which is kind of predominantly the removal that is played in Historic, is awful against Lingering Souls. I mean, it makes 4 bodies for 1 card, and those 4 bodies have evasion, so they actually do get in for damage. It does present somewhat of a clock, and it's a wonderful card to just get rid of with something like a Faithless Looting, because you can still cast it later, so it doesn't cost you that card disadvantage.
Okay.
The next card that's in my Magical Christmas Land ties in with the artifact theme here, and really what this one kind of does is it just kind of ties back to Vault Scourge, because I'm getting flashbacks of Affinity and Modern, and that one being Cranial Plating. Cranial Plating is one of the most powerful artifacts, one of the most powerful artifact equipment ever made. So it's 2 colorless mana for an artifact equipment that says equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. You can pay 2 black mana, and you can attach Cranial Plating to target creature you control, and you can actually do that at instant speed. Or you can pay 1 to equip it to a creature. It's very cheap. It comes down early. It's very fast, or it's very easy to equip. You can equip it at instant speed, which means that it makes blocking very difficult for your opponent. And if you are playing a deck that likes cards like Vault Scourge, where you're just kind of dumping a bunch of artifact creatures very quickly, Vault Scourges and Ornithopters and stuff like that, Cranial Plating does wonders in those decks. I don't see it.
Your wish list here is potentially can break the format, it sounds like.
Like Lingering Souls and Cranial Plating are both incredibly, incredibly powerful cards. However, the wonderful thing about Historic is that Historic is this really odd format right now, where we have some cards that are deemed too powerful for Modern that we get in Historic, and we have other cards that, like, I don't know, it's just it's this weird hodgepodge of power level. So I don't necessarily know what Wizards' vision is with this. So I don't know if I can tell you, like, this is too good for Historic or this is not good enough for Historic, because I don't really know what they define the format to be. It seems like here lately with the Historic Anthology 4 that dropped, and then like 2 weeks later, or like, and it was probably like a month later, but like a month later, we got Strixhaven, which introduced all those Mystic Archives. And now, in like 2 more weeks, we're getting Historic Anthology 5. So there is this like massive shakeup within the format. And like the tier 1 decks that currently exist may not even be tier 1 decks whenever it comes to just the end of the month. They might be tier 2. They might not actually even be like playable, or they might be not exist in the same rendition that they currently do. So I don't know. It's really difficult for me to analyze this format just because I don't know what Wizards deems too powerful or okay. And that's
Based
where we get to
on...
the I'm sorry, you go.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's where we get to the crown jewel of Magical Christmas Land.
Go
This
ahead.
is little Dave taking his Christmas wish list up to the mall Santa and sitting on the creepy old dude's lap and like wishing with my whole heart's desire for just one thing. And all I want, I look up there with like my little like joyous eyes and my big old smile stretching ear from ear. So I look at him and I say, Santa Claus, Mr. Watsy, all I want is Snapcaster Mage.
All I want is Snapcaster Mage. Can I has, please?
We have two different cards with flashback that have already been spoiled, given that they're very, very specific. And I just went off on Magical Christmas Land about how Lingering Souls is a powerful card. And because I love flashback, maybe I just got a hard on for Innistrad. Maybe that's what it is. Because I love flashback, and because I don't know the power level of this format, because like it's not defined anywhere, let's just go with the king of flashback himself. And let's go with Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster Mage is 1 in a blue for a creature human wizard. It's a 2/1 with flash, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost or mana value, and that you may cast that card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, then exile it. Essentially what this does is it turns any instant or sorcery card in your graveyard into a card with flashback that you can then reuse, potentially at instant speed, because this guy has flash.
Okay.
Any card in your graveyard that is an instant or sorcery can be cast a second time. Snapcaster Mage is one of the best creatures to ever exist.
And you think Wizards going to be like, let's just put it in Historic?
Look, I'm over here and I'm writing some candy canes, and I went off on my analogy here in the very beginning. My thing here being is that this is probably the least likely card we've talked about today to actually get printed, especially since we have all those Mystic all the archive cards that just got put into Historic from Strixhaven. There are many, 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 many of them that would immediately become problems with Snapcaster Mage. But I don't know. Like I said, I mean, this card has existed in Modern. And it was a powerhouse in Modern, yes. But we have cards that exist in Historic that were deemed too powerful for Modern. We also have the vice versa, where we have cards that are powerful in Modern that were deemed too powerful in Historic. Let me have Lightning Bolt and Path. Actually, let me have Path. I'm not sure about Lightning Bolt. I don't think I want those aggro decks to be quite that good. But I don't know. I mean, that would kind of be the crown jewel topper for me. And to be completely honest with you, so far, I kind of like what I see. If Wizards wants me to go out and spend the money on the Historic Anthology, because for those of you who do not know, you can buy these just outright, and you'll get copies of all of these cards. So it's not like you have to go off and spend a shit ton of wild cards on this. You can if you want to, if that's your thing and you're a sadist like that, go for it. You can go out there and you can spend all like 100 wild cards to go and make this. But you could also just go out and buy it. And if Wizards wants me to buy it, they can kind of sucker me in with some of these cards. Things like Snapcaster Mage. Honestly, I would not care if the other 24 cards, if this was 25 cards, I wouldn't care if the other 24 cards were absolute garbage. I would probably still jump on that. So
Well,
those are my magical Christmas land cards. This is what we know about historic.
Papa
Anthology
Watsy, you
5.
heard him.
Yeah, I've been a good boy this year. I think. I mean, shit, I haven't done anything with COVID. I haven't been able to go anywhere. I haven't been able to be naughty. Give me what I want.
Oh, Dave. Well, I hope you get your Christmas list. True. Maybe that'll entice me to go play some historic with your friend.
There you go. We're going to make another video later on that kind of recaps some of this. We're going to talk about some of the cards that do get printed in historic, about how I'm wrong in many different cases, because I know I'm going to be in several of these examples, and about how I'm right and ecstatic that Snapcaster Mage is in historic. Right?
Yeah, dude. We'll just keep going with that and hope for the best.
Alrighty.
But yeah, we'll do an update video when they announce the entire set. Could be in the next couple of weeks. Could be tomorrow. I don't know. But yeah, I look forward to hearing if you were correct or not. I have a feeling you might not be correct on Snapcaster.
Oh, I have more than a feeling that I'm not right. I have more than a feeling I'm not right about many of these cards.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please leave a like on the video if you liked it. Share it with your friends if you want. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, this is Guys of Magic. Later.